either originality or quality. The morning show is already a ratings wasteland. Now he wants to screw up the evening programming as well. I'd have more faith in the bloody goldfish at reception to head up the organisation proper. Hania Aronofsky, the executive head of programming, reached out and tapped the control pad, finally muting Nick mid-sentence, something Sabrina would frequently like to do herself. For long, fraught seconds, nobody said a word. Then, moving her hand to her mouth, Sabrina coughed. "Slow clap, Davenport." With studious care, she smoothed down her leather pencil skirt, verbally eviscerating the big boss while on company premises and without bothering to even close the door first. If you felt it was time for a career change, it might have been more politic to just type a letter of resignation. For the first time since they'd all been summoned into Hania's office, Nick produced an actual expression, which lowered the temperature of the already chilly room by another few degrees. As it happened, she agreed with every scathing word he'd uttered about Lionel Grimes. The billionaire had thrown both their careers into stressful upheaval this year, after he'd acquired and merged their respective networks. Shortly thereafter, he'd confirmed his intention to streamline the 2 evening news commentary shows into one, and do at least one of them out of a job. Their CEO was bumptious, rude, and intolerant, and he had a track record of using his media outlets to promote whoever was currently hanging off his arm. However, regardless of the brutal truth in Nick's commentary, there was a place to express that opinion in such colourful terms. In one's head. At every turn, Nick was determined to prove himself an arse. Likely for the first time in his life, he had now become as silent as his frozen image on the screen. There wasn't much he could say. The phrase, "didn't have a leg to stand on," had been invented specifically for this situation. Hania was turning a pen in circles between her fingers. On each rotation, she tapped the end of it against the desk, and the rhythmic sound was like a clock ticking down, possibly on Nick's continued employment. "Not the wisest move in your career, Nick?" When he spoke at last, his words were a stiff staccato, not the usual velvety voice that was one of his greatest assets. When he wielded it like a weapon, it could bite deep and dark. If he wanted something, it glided along nerve endings like a cascade of warm honey. "I've already apologised to Grimes." That must have been an uncomfortable conversation. Grimes was rapidly conscious of his public image. Sabrina suspected he put a lot of money in influential pockets to control his media profile, since even the press he didn't own tended to near canonize him in print. "It was unprofessional to speak like that on the clock, in this building." Nick made a faint derisive noise in the back of his throat, and again shifted his weight. With jerky movements, he pushed up his shirt sleeves. A painful-looking scar on his right forearm wound across smooth brown skin and compact muscle in a jagged line. And I will admit that not closing the door when the hallway was crawling with interns was ill-judged. If that was how he'd phrased his official grovel, she was surprised his job had survived this long. Hania arched strong black brows at him. "Just a touch unfortunate." She suddenly smacked her pen down. "Within 20 minutes of that video going live, he was on the phone to legal, requesting a copy of your contract." Several of the management team in the room moved abruptly, with a rustle of clothing and the squeak of leather cushions. Nick didn't flinch, and Sabrina had to reluctantly admire his calm as he said evenly, "Which expires very shortly anyway." Her contract was also up for renewal. She'd been hoping it would be replaced with a thicker one for the new show, but that was looking increasingly doubtful. She'd thought it would be a tight race to the headline contract, until Nick had pulled a stunt a few months ago that still made her want to pick up the stapler on Hania's desk and go to town on his treacherous bastard face. However, Grimes didn't like bad press for his staff any more than he accepted it for himself, and her reputation had taken a battering.